My grandfather died without leaving a will. My dad inherited the entire estate and sneered at me. You won't get a single cent. Your brother will be the next heir. Then my mom showed up, handed me an envelope and whispered, "It's time to tell them who you really are." But let me back up. Because this story doesn't start with that envelope. It starts at a funeral where I was made to feel like I didn't belong at my own grandfather's memorial. The November rain is coming down in sheets outside the crematorium. I'm standing under a black umbrella that's doing a terrible job keeping me dry, watching my family cluster together under the awning like I'm radioactive. My father, Robert. His second wife, Patricia. My half-brother, Derek, who's 24 and has never worked a day in his life that didn't involve Dad's money. And then there's me, Alex, 28 years old, standing alone, wondering why I even came. My mum, my biological mother, Laura, is even further back, practically invisible. She hasn't been part of this family for 16 years, not since Dad left her for Patricia when I was 12. But she's here anyway, paying respects to a man who was kinder to her in divorce than his own son ever was. Thomas Carter, my grandfather, self-made millionaire who built Carter Manufacturing from nothing. 3 employees in 1975 to 200 today. £12 million estate. Dead at 73 from a massive heart attack while playing golf. The service ends. People file out, murmuring condolences that sound rehearsed. And that's when the family lawyer, Mr. Henderson, makes an announcement that changes everything. There will be a reading of the estate distribution at the family home. Immediately, the words hang in the damp air like a threat. Back at the house, the massive 6-bedroom Georgian manor that Grandpa bought in 1985, we gather in his study. The room still smells like his cigars and old leather. Photos line the walls. Grandpa with business partners, with charity organizations, with family. But notably, most of the family photos stop around 2007. Around the time of the divorce. Around the time I apparently stopped being worth photographing. Mr. Henderson wastes no time. He's a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and the demeanor of someone who's delivered bad news before and will do it again. Thomas Carter died intestate, without a will. Under UK law, his entire estate passes to his only child, Robert Carter. Dad's sitting behind Grandpa's desk like he already owns the place. Which, I suppose, he does now. The estate is valued at approximately £12 million, Mr. Henderson continues. This includes Carter Manufacturing, 3 residential properties, and substantial investment portfolios. Patricia's trying not to smile. Derek's already on his phone, probably texting his mates about his future inheritance. And I'm just numb. Because I'd expected something. Not out of entitlement. I hadn't talked to Grandpa about money ever, but because he'd always told me I was his special girl. That he'd make sure I was taken care of. I guess I know what that promise was worth now. Dad clears his throat. He's got this look on his face, satisfaction mixed with something uglier. Vindication, maybe. Since the estate comes to me by law, he says, looking directly at me, I've decided how to distribute it within our family. Here it comes. Derek will be taking over Carter Manufacturing. He's been working there for 3 years, learning the business, proving himself. He'll also receive the primary real estate holdings. Derek's trying to look humble, failing spectacularly. As for you, Alex, Dad's voice goes cold. You made it clear years ago that you want nothing to do with the family business. You have your little sustainability, consulting work. So you'll get nothing from the family wealth. Not a single cent. The words land like a physical blow. Patricia shifts in her chair, barely containing her glee. Derek's smirking openly now. And Mr. Henderson looks deeply uncomfortable but says nothing. That's when my mum speaks up. Laura's been so quiet I'd almost forgotten she was in the room. But now she stands, and there's steel in her voice I haven't heard in years. Robert, we need to talk. Privately. Now. Dad doesn't even look at her. We have nothing to discuss, Laura. The estate is settled. It's not settled, Laura says, her voice steady. Not even close. Because there's something Alex doesn't know. Something Thomas made me promise to keep secret until after he died. Everyone goes still. Laura reaches into her bag and pulls out an envelope, yellowed with age, sealed with red wax, and written across the front in Grandpa's distinctive handwriting, for Alex. Your grandfather left specific instructions, Laura says, walking across the room and placing the envelope in my shaking hands. It's time to tell them who you really are. The room goes absolutely silent. You could hear a pin drop. Dad's face flashes from dismissive to something else, nervous, afraid. Patricia's moved closer to Derek, like she's protecting him from whatever's about to happen. My hands are shaking as I take the envelope from Mum. What is this? Why did Grandpa give this to you and not leave it with his lawyer? Because he didn't trust Robert to follow through, Laura says simply, and the decades of resentment in her voice could cut glass. He gave this to me 15 years ago, right after the divorce, with very specific instructions. Whatever that is, it doesn't matter, Dad says, but his voice has lost its earlier confidence. There's no will. The law is clear. Open it, Alex, Mum interrupts. Read it out loud. The seal breaks with a satisfying crack. Inside is a letter, 3 pages in Grandpa's handwriting. The first page is dated March 2008, 3 months after my parents' divorce. My dearest Alex, I read, my voice trembling. If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and your father has likely done exactly what I feared, cut you out of everything because you're not his real family anymore. I look up. Dad's gone pale. I'm sorry I couldn't prevent this while I was alive, but I can make sure the truth comes out now. You are not just my granddaughter. You are my business partner. Robert actually laughs. It's a harsh, disbelieving sound. Dad was losing it at the end. This is nonsense. Let her finish. Laura snaps. I continue, my voice getting stronger. When you were 18, you came to me with a business idea, the Sustainability Consulting Division. You wanted the company to move into green manufacturing. I loved your vision, but I knew your father would shut it down. So we made a deal. I would fund your idea as a separate entity, and you would own 40% of it. I would own 60%. We called it Carter Green Solutions. My head snaps up. I remember. We launched it when I was at university. But Grandpa said it was just a pilot program. It wasn't a pilot program, Mum says. It was a separate legal entity. Thomas made sure of it. She looks at Mr. Henderson, who's flipping frantically through his files. And over the past 10 years, Mum continues, while you've been running it thinking you were just helping Grandpa with a side project, that company has grown to be worth £8 million, 40% of which belongs to you. The math hits me like a freight train. £3.2 million. I own £3.2 million worth of company assets. Not as an inheritance, as an existing business partner. That's impossible, Patricia says, but her voice is weak. It's very possible, Mr. Henderson confirms, looking up from his documents. I'm seeing the incorporation papers right here. Carter Green Solutions, registered as a private limited company in 2013. Alex Carter owns 40% of issued shares. Derek's not smirking anymore. Dad looks like he might be sick. But there's more, Mum says, and I realize she's been waiting for this moment for 16 years. The letter doesn't end there. Read the second page, Alex. My hands are shaking so badly I can barely read the second page. The handwriting changes here, shakier, like it was written later. There's something else you need to know, and I'm sorry you're learning it this way. When you were born, I was there at the hospital. I held you when you were minutes old, and I made a decision that day that I've never regretted, but one I knew would cause chaos when the truth came out. I pause, my heart hammering. Alex, Robert is not your biological father. He never was. The room explodes. Dad's shouting that this is a lie. Patricia's demanding to see the letter. Derek's just staring, genuinely shocked for the first time in his life. But Mum is crying silently, and I realize she knew. She's always known. Laura came to me when she was pregnant. I continue reading through my own tears. She was young, scared, and in a relationship with Robert that I could see was already failing. She told me the truth, that she'd had a brief relationship with someone else during a separation from Robert, and she didn't know who the father was. I can't breathe. My entire identity is crumbling in real time. When you were born, I paid for a paternity test without Robert's knowledge. The results were clear. Robert was not your biological father. But he and Laura were trying to work things out. He believed you were his. And I made a choice. I told Laura to never tell him. Because I'd already fallen in love with you, Alex. You were my granddaughter in every way that mattered, biology be damned. This is bullshit, Robert says, but the words sound hollow. I legally adopted you when you were 6 months old. The letter continues. With Laura's consent, but without Robert's knowledge. The paperwork was filed quietly through a family court judge I knew. Legally, you are not Robert's daughter. You are mine. The implications crash over everyone at once. And that means, I read, barely able to get the words out. The business partnership between us, the assets I put in your name, the trust fund I established, none of it goes through Robert's inheritance. It comes directly to you, as my legally adopted daughter and as my business partner. Mr. Henderson's face has gone white. Robert, did you know about this adoption? My father couldn't have. There would be records. There are records, Laura says quietly, pulling documents from her bag. I have copies. I've had them for 27 years. Thomas wanted to wait until Alex was 25 to tell her, but then he decided it was better to wait until after he was gone. So Robert couldn't manipulate the situation while Thomas was alive. Mr. Henderson takes the documents with shaking hands. Adoption papers. Court orders. All legal. All binding. I need to make some calls, he says, his professional composure cracking. If Alex was legally adopted by Thomas Carter, then she's not just a business partner. Under intestate succession law, she's considered his child. He looks at Robert, and the next words change everything. Which means she inherits 50% of his entire estate. The £12 million estate just got split in half. The next hour is absolute chaos. Mr. Henderson is on his phone with the probate court, demanding they pull adoption records from 1996. Robert's threatening to sue everyone in the room. Patricia's eerily quiet, probably doing mental calculations about how much money just evaporated from her future. Derek slumped in a chair, his guaranteed inheritance now contested. But I'm stuck on one thing. One question that's bigger than money or inheritance or legal battles. Who's my biological father? The room goes quiet. Mum takes my hand, and I can see she's been dreading this question for 28 years. His name was Daniel Morrison. He was a colleague at the hospital where I worked as a nurse. We had a brief relationship during a separation from Robert. When I got pregnant, Daniel and I had ended things, and Robert and I were trying to reconcile. Where is he now? I don't know, Mum admits. We lost touch. He moved to Canada for work before you were born. I tried to find him a few years ago, but I found him. Everyone whips around. There's a man standing in the doorway. 50s. Salt and pepper hair. Nervous but determined. My name is Daniel Morrison. Thomas Carter contacted me 6 months ago. He told me I had a daughter, and he asked me to come to this reading if anything happened to him. I can't speak, can't move, because I'm looking at the stranger and seeing my own eyes staring back at me. My nose, my slightly crooked smile. I'm sorry, Daniel says, voice thick. I didn't know. Your mother and I, we ended badly. I left for Canada, built a life there. Got married, had 2 more kids. He has other kids. I have siblings. Half-siblings. But when Thomas called me and explained everything, I could not come. I couldn't let you think you were alone. You have other kids. I whisper. 2 daughters. Sophie is 23. Emma is 19. They know about you. I told them everything when Thomas contacted me. They want to meet you if you're open to it. She's not meeting anyone, Robert interrupts, finding his voice. I don't care what some DNA test says. I raised her. I'm her father. Laura's laugh is bitter. You abandoned her when she was 12. You left us for Patricia. You stopped paying child support. You excluded her from family events. You made her feel like she didn't matter because she wasn't blood. Her voice rises. Well, guess what, Robert? She isn't your blood. And now, legally, she's entitled to half of what you thought was yours. Mr. Henderson hangs up his phone, face grave. The adoption records are confirmed. Alex Carter was legally adopted by Thomas Carter in 1996. She is considered his daughter under law. He pauses, and I can see there's more. But there's another issue. The business partnership documents show that Carter Green Solutions isn't just worth £8 million. According to the last valuation from 3 months ago, it's worth £15 million. And it's been using patent technology that's owned by the main Carter manufacturing business. He looks at me. Which means Alex technically owns shares in the main company too, through the patent licensing agreements. The patent revelation, sends Robert into a complete spiral. That's impossible, he says, but there's no conviction left in his voice. Those patents were developed in-house. They were developed by Alex, Mum corrects, and there's pride in her voice. She worked on them through university and her master's program. Thomas made sure they were filed under Carter Green Solutions, not the main company. He wanted to protect her work. Mr. Henderson's flipping through more documents, and his expression keeps getting grimmer. It gets more complicated. The main company has been paying licensing fees to Carter Green Solutions for the past 8 years, pound 200,000 annually. That money has been going into a trust account. He looks at me. Alex, did you know about this? I shake my head numb. Grandpa handled all the business side. I just did the technical work and consulting. The trust account has £1.6 million in it, Mr. Henderson continues, plus accumulated interest. It's been designated as retained earnings pending distribution to primary shareholder. That's you, Alex. And that's when Derek stands up. He's been quiet through all of this, but now he looks genuinely distressed. Not angry. Not greedy. Just troubled. Dad, you knew. Robert goes very still. Derek. You knew, Derek repeats, voice shaking. 6 months ago, when Grandpa was still alive, you had that huge argument with him about the patents. I overheard it. The room's gone dead silent. Grandpa told you that Alex owned them, that you couldn't push her out of the company. And you said, Derek swallows hard, you said you'd find a way to invalidate the adoption. Laura's face goes white with fury. You've known for 6 months that Alex was his legal daughter, and you still plan to cut her out completely? She's not family, Robert says, but it sounds desperate now. She's not my blood. She's more his family than you ever were, Derek interrupts, and everyone looks at him in shock. My half-brother, the golden child, the heir apparent, is standing up to our father. I've been working at the company for 3 years. You know what I learned? Grandpa was planning to make Alex CEO, not me. He told me that directly last year. He said she had the vision, the ethics, the drive. He said I could be CFO if I proved myself, but the company needed her leadership. He looks at me with something like regret. I knew that, and I helped Dad plan to shut you out anyway because I wanted to be the heir. I wanted the power. But watching this, watching him try to literally erase you, I can't do it anymore. Patricia finally speaks. Derek, don't. No, Mom. Derek says firmly. This is wrong. She built the sustainability division. She developed the patents that saved the company when traditional manufacturing was failing. She's Grandpa's daughter, legally, actually. He pulls out his phone. And I recorded the conversation where you and Dad discussed forging documents to invalidate the adoption. I've had it for 6 months. I was going to delete it, but I kept it just in case. He looks at me. I think Alex's lawyer should probably hear it. Derek plays the recording. And it's damning. Robert's voice, crystal clear. The adoption can be challenged. Alex was a minor. Laura didn't have proper legal counsel. We can argue Thomas manipulated her when she was vulnerable. Another voice, a lawyer I don't recognize. It's risky. If it fails, Alex could sue for fraud. Robert again. Then we make sure it doesn't fail. We find every technicality. And if that doesn't work, we force her out of the company. Make her life so miserable, she sells her shares back to us for pennies. The recording ends. Robert looks like he might throw up. Robert, Mr. Henderson says carefully, are you aware this constitutes conspiracy to commit fraud? I was protecting my family, Robert says weakly. Alex I.S. family. Laura screams. She's been your daughter for 28 years. You raised her. And the moment you found out she wasn't biologically yours, you decided to destroy her. I've been silent through all of this. Processing. Trying to understand how we got here. Finally I speak. I don't want the company. Everyone stares at me like I've lost my mind. I don't want Carter Manufacturing. I don't want to fight over inheritance. I don't want to tear the family apart more than it already is. I look at Derek. You've worked there for 3 years. You know the operations. And despite helping Dad plan to screw me over, you just torpedoed that plan to tell the truth. That counts for something. I turn to Mr. Henderson. What are my actual legal rights here? He consults his notes. As Thomas's adopted daughter, you're entitled to 50% of his estate under intestate law, That's £6 million in assets plus 50% ownership of Carter Manufacturing. As co-owner of Carter Green Solutions, you own your 40% share, worth approximately £6 million. And you own the patents, which makes you a key stakeholder in the main company's profitability. He does some quick math. Conservatively, you're worth about £12 million in assets and future earnings. £12 million. The same amount as Grandpa's entire estate. And if I choose to sell my inherited share, Robert would be obligated to buy you out at fair market value. I take a breath. Make my decision. Here's my offer. I keep Carter Green Solutions, my company, my patents, my work. I keep the £1.6 million in the trust account that's rightfully mine. And I'll sell my inherited share of Carter Manufacturing back to the family for £4 million, £2 million below market value. Robert looks stunned. Why would you? Because I'm not you, I say simply. I don't need to bleed this family dry to prove my worth. I built something independently. I don't need Grandpa's money, I needed his belief in me. Which I already had. I pause. But there are conditions. You will publicly acknowledge that Grandpa adopted me and that I'm legally his daughter. You will apologize to my mother for 16 years of treating her like she doesn't exist. And Derek becomes CEO of Carter Manufacturing, not you, Dad. You retire. Robert's pride is warring with his practicality. £4 million to buy out my share is half of what he'd pay in a legal battle he'd likely lose. You can't force me to retire, he says. Actually, I can. As a 50% owner of the company, until you buy me out, I have equal voting rights on the board. Derek has already agreed to vote with me. That's a majority. You're out. I soften slightly. Dad, you're 58 years old. Retire. Live off your inheritance. Travel. Do whatever you want. But stop running a company you don't have passion for anymore. The fight goes out of him. Maybe it's exhaustion. Maybe it's the realization that he's lost. Or maybe, just maybe, it's recognition that I'm right. Fine, he says finally. I'll take your offer. But don't expect me to suddenly become Father of the Year. I don't. I say honestly. I stopped expecting that when I was 12. I turned to Daniel, my biological father. I'd like to meet Sophie and Emma. If the offer's still open. His face breaks into a smile. They're actually outside. They flew in with me. They've been waiting in a cafe down the street for 2 hours. That breaks something in me. I start crying, and Mum pulls me into a hug. 6 months later, everything's changed. Carter Green Solutions is a fully independent company with me as CEO. Carter Manufacturing, under Derek's leadership, has maintained the licensing agreement but is expanding into new markets. Robert retired to Spain with Patricia. They're minimally involved in family matters. Daniel flies to London every 6 weeks. I've traveled to Vancouver twice to meet Sophie and Emma, my half-sisters who welcomed me immediately and without reservation. Mum started dating again for the first time since the divorce. She's finally allowing herself to heal. And me. I'm standing in my new office overlooking the Thames. There's a photo on my desk. Grandpa and me at my university graduation, both laughing. Under it, a note in his handwriting that I found tucked in the envelope. You were never my consolation prize for not having a real granddaughter. You were always my first choice. Never forget that. I haven't. I won't. They said I get nothing because I wasn't blood. Turns out, the only thing that never mattered was biology. What mattered was who showed up, who believed in me, and who built something with me instead of for me.